Marine reacts to exploring the SCP Foundation. The faction that we're going to be taking a look at today in the SCP universe is going to be the Serpent's Hand by the Exploring series. As always, I'm going to be leaving a link to the original video and channel down in the description below, so go ahead and make sure that you check them out. Alright, so as far as the Serpent's Hand goes, I have been hearing its name mentioned in some of the other SCPs that I've been seeing. From what I do remember is that someone commented that these are the more, they want the SCPs to be free, from what I've been told. And I do remember that, I believe it was one of Dr. Bright's sisters also joined the Serpent's Hand at one point, or is still a part of it. In any case, I'm excited to see how this faction interacts with the other factions, and just what their own personal place is in the SCP universe. But before we get into the actual SCP video, don't forget to like, subscribe, really does help me out a lot. Hit that notification bell right there, that way you get notified every time I do upload. Sometimes I'm uploading twice a day. Typically working on videos in the morning, and releasing them in the late afternoon to late evening. That way when you all get off work, you can enjoy these videos at your leisure. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and see what the Serpent's Hand is all about.
The Serpent's Hand. From human rights activists, to civil rights activists, to animal rights activists, our world is filled with people fighting and advocating for the rights of all sorts of things. It stands to reason, then, that in a world such as the SCP universe, filled with anomalies, there are going to be individuals fighting for the rights of the anomalous. These people are known as the Serpent's Hand. Ultimately, the Serpent's Hand would like to see all of the anomalies that they deem to be non-dangerous out free, with the public fully aware of their existence.
Well, I mean, it's good to see that they're not just they're not a group that just goes willy-nilly and tries to, I can't believe I just said that, and tries to just release every single SCP. Like, they're actually, would only want that to happen if they know the SCP isn't dangerous. I wonder if the Serpent's Hand actually already tells people that all these anomalies or SCPs actually exist, but maybe they just don't have the proof, so people don't believe them, people don't take them seriously. They might be a smaller group. I'm not sure how big they are, but just something to kind of think about.
And so this puts them at odds against groups like the Foundation and the GOC. Like many things in the SCP universe, the operations of the Serpent's Hand are fairly mysterious. But let's look at some of their beliefs and the work they've done. One of the few things we can say for certain about the Serpent's Hand, aside from their goal, is that they possess access to an extra-dimensional space known as the Wanderer's Library.
I believe I also saw this in Your Friendly Neighborhood Keter. I was kind of unsure what was going on at that point, but hopefully this will shed some of that light.
The Wanderer's Library is basically a massive repository of books, including practically every book that was ever written, books that haven't been written yet, and books that will never be written, if you can wrap your head around that. The Serpent's Hand do not own or run the library, they merely utilize it, and in fact it's said that they only rediscovered the library in 1967, after being removed from it for some time. The library is staffed by individuals that apparently broke the rules of the library, such as not damaging books, not stealing books, and not harming anyone within the library. The archivists are connected to the desks in the main hall, and they instinctively know how to find every book within the library.
I wonder if there's actually somebody who runs the whole thing.
They also handle the distribution of library cards, checking books out, and keeping track of who has borrowed which book. They possess no eyes and no legs, as they are directly connected to their chairs. Pages are the entities responsible for reshelving books in the library, possessing 6 to 10 arms, bowed legs, and squat bodies, making them excellent climbers. They spend most of their time climbing across the vast arrays of shelves located within the library. The docents act as library guides, taking visitors to find books, as well as acting as library security against both hostile intruders and rule violators. They have no mouths, and their left hand is replaced with a chain connected to an ever-burning lantern. The library is apparently entered through the use of multi-dimensional portals called ways, although their nature and number is pretty much unknown. Many entities utilize the library for various purposes, and the Serpent's Hand use it as a base of operations and general meeting place. Unlike many other groups within the SCP universe,
Just a real quick thing about that library. Since it also contains books that will never be written, is it technically infinite then? I mean, I would assume so, right?
the Serpent's Hand don't have a strict hierarchy or organization process. They function as more of a loose political movement than a proper organization, and so the group seems to be divided into a number of different smaller factions with differing ideologies and methods. All it takes to be a part of the Serpent's Hand is to simply consider yourself one of the Serpent's Hand. There's likely no central leader to the entire group, merely leaders of different cells and factions.
Really brings up the question then, who started this organization? When did it start? I could understand why. Maybe if it was one of those situations where the person who probably founded it did it because maybe they had somebody that they cared about being anomalous, and they ended up getting maybe abducted by the SCP Foundation or another group. I know this is getting very specific, but I don't know. I'm just trying to draw my own conclusions. And eventually, maybe as soon as he got her back, or I don't know, something happened, everybody kind of split up and started doing their own thing, and then started creating the little small factions within that faction. A bit of a mouthful, but I don't know. The way they operate, as far as having like no leader figure, whatever you want to call it, doesn't seem to be very stable, because if your ideologies can also go against someone else's, even if they're would technically be on the same side, it more likely than not could cause conflict.
An individual known as M is one of them, as well as another that goes by the initials LS. LS's identity is up for debate, but a leading theory is that she is actually the Black Queen, a title for the daughter of Dr. Gears, a noted Foundation researcher. The Black Queen is known to have access to the Wanderer's library and to hold a grudge against her father in the SCP Foundation.
When they keep saying people have access to the library, how exactly do they get that access?
Additionally, it's believed that there are thousands of Black Queens across thousands of universes, and a number of them use the library as a meeting place, referring to each other as Little Sisters, or LS. An SCP connected to LS is SCP-268, a newsboy cap that causes a wearer to become unnoticeable by anyone around them. The wearer is generally completely ignored, and observers will be unable to recall any specific details about the wearer. If the wearer speaks or interacts physically with an observer, they will be noticed, but soon forgotten again. The effects seem to build upon a wearer, and if they wear it long enough, the effects strengthen and even linger after removing the hat. 268 was used in field operations by some Foundation agents, but after a while, everyone at the Foundation forgot the agent existed. That being said, it's certainly a useful anomaly for someone trying to go into places they don't belong. Unfortunately, the Foundation no longer possesses the SCP, as one day they discovered it missing, a note in its place reading, "Thanks, I needed my hat back. LS." There was also a label on the hat reading, "The garden is the Serpent's place," connecting it to the Serpent's Hand.
And as far as the Wanderer's library goes, what exactly, like, are these books, they're just regular books? Like, say, I could just pull a book out of a library right now down the street? Or is, because I keep wanting to think, like, there's magical books or, like, some kind of spell books in my mind. It just keeps going to that.
The Serpent's Hand don't exactly get along with most of the other paranormal groups acting in the SCP universe. They clash the most with the Global Occult Coalition, which they refer to as the Book Burners, due to the GOC's general policy of destroying the anomalous. The GOC have apparently launched at least one raid on the Wanderer's library, destroying part of it, and the GOC considers every Serpent's Hand member to be a high-level threat. The Serpent's Hand get along a little better with the SCP Foundation, which they refer to as the Jailers, although that's not saying much. The Serpent's Hand are fundamentally against the Foundation's policy of secrecy, and definitely object to their treatment and containment of harmless anomalies. But
it's funny as far as their secrecy goes, because I still haven't noticed or seen anything that says that the Serpent Hands are public. But the fact that they don't like the fact that the SCP Foundation is secretive, I don't really understand that, because there's certain was it mimetic SCPs, or like SCPs that mess with the mind. And if anything like that gets public, or people stumble upon it, or if people found out the SCP Foundation was real, I'm pretty sure you have maybe a couple hackers here or there that would try to like just be curious, right? Figure out what's going on. But that's secrecy. I don't know. I guess it really depends on how you want to view it. Like, if I knew 682 was real, or you know what, I would rather not want to know, because even if I did know, what would I be able to do about it? I don't know. I guess it just depends on the SCP and the way you see things, in a sense.
they do acknowledge that not every anomaly should be free. They get along fairly well with Marshall, Carter, and Dark, the merchants, due to their willingness to obtain anomalies from both the Foundation and the GOC for the right price. That being said, they are still wary of them, as MC&D rarely make fair bargains. The Serpent's Hand are more fascinated by the Church of the Broken God than anything else, but they are against the Chaos Insurgency, who they call the Madmen, due to the damage they've done to the library and their general hostility. The Serpent's Hand generally believes that humanity is better off with full knowledge of the anomalous, so that they can better protect themselves from danger.
But then again, it comes to that how would you be able to protect yourself, specifically for people that have no ideas that these things are going on, or that these things even exist. How would you even prepare for that, even if you didn't know that they do? I think they have a good intention of what they're trying to do as far as the execution. And when they say that they want them to be able to be prepared and protect themselves, I feel like their execution doesn't really have a solution yet. And they're just trying to wing it. From what I'm getting, at least.
It's not their stance that every anomaly should be left free and out in the open, so their beliefs are a bit more nuanced than, say, the GOC. In fact, there are cases where the Serpent's Hand have actually destroyed dangerous anomalies. SCP-407 was a song in an unidentified language sung by what seemed to be humans. Listeners of the song described it as soothing and beautiful, but while playing, 407 caused rapid cell generation in any life forms nearby. During the first minute, this only causes the subject to become much healthier, curing scarring, wounds, chronic diseases, brain and spinal cord injuries, and more. During the second and third minutes, subjects begin experiencing unnecessary unrestrained cell growth, as tumors and fat deposits begin covering their body. During the fourth minute, increased bacterial and fungal growth occurs, creating respiratory and digestive problems. Past 5 minutes, trace elements of plants or fungus, as well as any animal life present, begin to grow and replicate uncontrollably, often shaping into new organisms. Essentially, listening to the song causes life forms to erupt into plants and fungi, as well as new insect and animal life forms. Eventually, everything breaks down into a type of mold.
Is that the SCP that got Connor from the Confinement series? And also, real quick, just touching back on the last time it paused, as far as me saying that people knowing about SCPs and as far as them being able to actually prepare for it, I kind of forgot a little bit that they would only want the SCPs that that are considered non-dangerous to be released. Like, obviously not the dangerous ones like 682 or 096, because if they still have the SCPs that are dangerous contained, this doesn't mean that containment breaches wouldn't still happen. But say, for example, if 096, right? People found out, hey, there's this SCP that if you look at its face, it's going to come directly to you. It doesn't matter what's in the way, right? And that's one of those where it doesn't even have to be in the same area as you, so long as you see a picture of it. And I'm pretty sure there'd be a lot of people that wouldn't believe a lot of this stuff, but they would probably get a curiosity or try to, obviously in this day and age, make a YouTube video out of it. And then obviously, as you can see where this is going to kind of go, if you got a lot of eyes looking at one certain thing and then relating it with 096 as an example, you can understand why some complications would occur. But I mean, I understand, again, when they say that it would be good for the people to be prepared in case containment breaches do happen and they do get in a certain area. I just don't think they would be able to do much besides, I don't know, maybe make a shelter, like a bunker. But still don't think they would have much of a chance.
The individual known as LS broke into Site-19 one day while wearing SCP-268, simply by walking in. LS seemingly broke in to utilize SCP-914 for an unknown purpose, but also managed to delete SCP-407 completely from the Foundation system. LS also left a note near SCP-914, and so I'll read it in its entirety to give some insight to the Serpent's Hand. Dear Sirs of the Foundation, behind guns and protocol you hide, desperately chaining the ineffable, yourselves stuck within your own self-wrought pitiful cages of fear and ignorance. You think yourselves the shepherd guarding the flocks of the unwise over the night, but you are so shaken by doubt and fear that in your bewildered arrogance you would vainly seek to chain the sun itself unto the heavens to hold back the daily night. The delivering angels themselves you contain with 3 digits and 4 walls. Do you not see the blindness with which you walk and swing your blade? On the final day would you have us contain Black Surtur himself with measures and science, and condemn ourselves to rotten stagnancy as you hold back his pure cleansing fires? I do not ask you not to act, but act with enlightenment and heart. Neither should one be seduced by the dark nor blinded by the light, but walk firmly in the twilight and gaze unto all realms. Walk the world of fire with bare feet, and you will find yourself without the scars you never knew you had. I leave you with one final truth. The garden is the Serpent's place. The divinities of fear and order who come to walk in the cool evening air are only visitors. Do not fail to see the evil hiding in the light, nor the aromatic beauty of the palest flower of darkness. Signed sincerely, L.S. P.S. You'll thank me for deleting what you call 407. Due to the fragmented nature of the Serpent's Hand, it can be difficult to definitively state the group's purpose and methods. Some factions of the Serpent's Hand are willing to work with the Foundation sometimes, while other groups are radical enough to cause end-of-the-world scenarios. Some of them are willing to destroy dangerous anomalies, while many others in the group are anomalies themselves. In general, though, the spread of knowledge of the paranormal is either their most important goal, or at least secrecy is of no concern of theirs, fully willing to expose the paranormal to the public. Some care more about the unfortunate treatment of harmless, sapient anomalies, and risk their lives in attempts to free them. Perhaps the world at large would indeed be better off knowing about the anomalous. Or perhaps the world would plunge into chaos. Either way, the members of the Serpent's Hand are determined to spread the word.
Alright, let's talk about that for a minute. Now, again, as far as I was saying, that even if people were to expose the reality of SCPs, it could also cause a mass hysteria. But then I do understand that it would be good that if people did know that if a containment breach were to happen, that at least they would have some kind of preparedness if they're in that general area. But then again, SCP Foundation sites are supposed to be more secluded, and depending on the SCP, people may or may not have a chance either way, even if they are prepared. I mean, this might even cause people to just get curious and kind of do like what they did at Area 51, although they didn't really get in. But It just attracted unwanted attention, essentially. But it's good that they really look at it in the sense that they understand there's dangerous ones and they don't want those to get out. But when you start at the end right there where it talks about all the different little factions within the Serpent's Hand, they can have extremely different ideologies. Some wanting everything just to be public, some working with the SCP Foundation, some just want to complete annihilation, some just wanting to go in there themselves and actually risk their lives to save some of these SCPs that they know aren't dangerous. When there's no unity or like no coming together, for example, in this group, the actions of a few are going to determine the entire whole. I hope I said that right. Obviously it depends on the person viewing it, but the way I would see it is if I was in the SCP Foundation, for example, and I saw one of the Serpent Hand groups, say one of the ones that would just wanted to complete annihilation, right? I immediately think, well, I guess that's what the Serpent Hand's all about. They just kind of want everything to run wild. But then again, there's some that understand that there are dangerous SCPs and don't want those to escape containment. It's kind of one of those things. You see one do it, then your general consensus is to assume that that's how the whole group is. But from what I was understanding is that this seems like a pretty decent group for the most part, considering the groups within it. They weren't necessarily trying to do anything bad or like anything that would cause harm, right? They're all really about what it seems to be spreading awareness of the SCP Foundation, just SCPs in general. This LS is like from different realities, right? And that she was supposed to be a daughter of Gears, and that they have so many versions of her from different realities that come there to have meetings. Is it possible that no, that wouldn't make sense, because I was thinking that maybe each one of the little subgroups is being led by one of them, but since they're coming from different realities, I don't think that would make sense. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Serpent's Hand, and that's gonna go ahead and do it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, really does help me a lot. Dislike if you didn't like it, it helps me improve the channel. If you're curious to see what's coming up next, check the description down below. You're gonna see a list of about 5, top to bottom. That's gonna be how I view them. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.